Listen closely because what I'm about to share catches most men completely off guard. There's a specific moment in every breakup that rewrites everything a woman believed about you. It's not when you fight back. It's not when you defend yourself. And it's definitely not the day she walks away. The real turning point comes later. Much later. In a moment so subtle you might miss it entirely. It happens when she finally witnesses something that contradicts everything she expected to see. You living your life fully. Moving forward strongly. Completely unbothered by her absence. This simple reality hits differently than any argument ever could. Your calm continuation speaks louder than 1,000 explanations. And the psychological impact of this discovery runs deeper than most people realize. See, during the relationship, she formed certain beliefs about what would happen if things ended. These weren't always conscious thoughts. Sometimes they lived quietly in the background of her mind. She might have assumed you'd struggle without her presence. That your world would feel incomplete. That you'd chase her, call her, try desperately to pull her back into your life. These assumptions felt natural to her. Because when someone invests time and emotion into a connection, they often believe that connection left a permanent mark on the other person. But then reality arrives with a different story. Weeks pass, then months, and instead of seeing the emotional wreckage she anticipated, she sees something else entirely. A man going about his day with purpose, focusing on his work, spending time with friends, pursuing his goals, living with the same energy he always had. At first she might dismiss it, tell herself you're just putting on a show, pretending to be fine when you're really falling apart inside. But pretending has a shelf life. Real stability doesn't. And as time continues forward without any cracks appearing in your composure, without any desperate attempts to reconnect, without any signs of emotional collapse, something in her mind starts shifting. The narrative she constructed begins falling apart. Because the mind works in patterns. It creates stories that make sense of emotional experiences. And her story required you to be stuck, to be struggling, to be diminished somehow by her absence. But you're not diminished. You're not stuck. You're not struggling. You're just continuing, building, growing, moving. This contradiction between what she expected and what she's witnessing forces her brain to do something uncomfortable. It makes her reconsider everything she thought she knew about you. Were you always this strong? Did she miss something important while you were together? What exactly is happening inside a man who can lose a relationship and continue forward like his life never stopped? These questions don't announce themselves loudly. They arrive quietly, persistently. Every time she checks in either directly or indirectly and sees the same steady progression. Your life didn't pause when she left it. That realization alone changes everything about how she remembers you. And once that shift happens, it never reverses. She never said it out loud, but she believed it deep down. That if things ended, you'd be the one left behind, emotionally tangled, mentally stuck, unable to move on fast. Not because she thought she was better than you. Not because she was arrogant. But because that's how closeness warps perception. The longer two people share a life, the easier it becomes to assume their bond had a deeper impact on the other person than it really did. You were present. You cared. You showed up. So she assumed your world revolved around the relationship. She mistook consistency for dependence, attention for need, investment for weakness. But here's what she didn't see while you were together. Your foundation wasn't built on her presence. It was built long before she arrived. And now that she's gone, that foundation is still standing. Stronger even. Because when everything else falls away, what remains is who you truly are, not who you were in the context of a shared life. She expected emotional chaos. That's what most people expect after a breakup. Sadness, bitterness, desperation, late-night texts, social media posts dripping with subtext. Some kind of reaction that proves the loss hit hard. But you gave her silence. Come. Forward motion. No drama. No begging. No attempts to rewrite history. Just daily progress, same routines, same focus, same quiet strength. That's what breaks through her assumptions. Not any grand gesture. Not some viral-worthy comeback. Just the boring, consistent act of living your life like nothing shattered when she walked away. Because when someone expects a collapse and sees stability instead, their brain has no choice but to rewire. Reality forces perspective. She starts questioning her own story. Was he really as affected as I thought? Did I confuse love with need this whole time? The truth hits slowly. You loved deeply, but you never lost yourself. You were emotionally involved, not emotionally dependent. There's a massive difference. One comes from strength, the other from fear. And now, seeing you continue forward without hesitation, she realizes which one you carried all along. This isn't about making her regret leaving. This isn't about winning or proving a point. This is about something far more powerful, revealing the full picture of who you are only after the relationship ends. While you were together, she only saw the parts of you that interacted with her. Now she sees the entire structure, the man who exists independently, with or without a partner beside him. And that image? It doesn't fade over time. It grows clearer, sharper, more respected. Because people don't forget a man who handles an ending with dignity. They remember the calm. They remember the lack of noise. They remember the refusal to break just to prove he was broken. And in that silence, in that steady movement forward, you communicate the loudest message of all. My life didn't stop because our relationship did. And that truth? Once seen can never be unseen. Most men make the same mistake after a breakup. They try to explain themselves. They send long messages. They craft the perfect words hoping something will land. Hoping she'll finally understand their side of the story. But words after a breakup rarely land the way you want them to. They bounce off walls built from emotion and pride. They get misread, twisted, dismissed. What actually penetrates those walls is something entirely different. Behavior. Pure, unspoken, undeniable behavior. When you tell someone you're doing great, they question it. When you show someone you're doing great by simply living it, they can't argue with it. There's no defense against reality unfolding right in front of someone's eyes. That's the power of composed silence. Not the silence of avoidance. Not the silence of suppression. The silence of a man who genuinely doesn't need to perform his healing for an audience. You wake up. You handle your responsibilities. You pursue what matters to you. You laugh with people who value your presence. You build something meaningful with your time. You don't broadcast it. You don't stage it for her to notice. You just live. And somehow, that casual act of living becomes the most disruptive force in her entire perception of you. Because she's watching. Maybe not obviously. Maybe not intentionally. But she's aware. People always remain aware of someone they once shared deep emotions with. And what she sees doesn't match what she prepared herself for. She prepared for your downfall. Not out of cruelty. Out of expectation. Society teaches us that breakups are supposed to destroy people temporarily. That there should be visible evidence of emotional damage. But you're offering no evidence. No public sadness. No cryptic posts. No mutual friends reporting that you're falling apart behind closed doors. Just a man continuing his life with the same energy he brought to everything before her. That absence of wreckage speaks volumes. It tells her that your emotional world wasn't fragile. That the relationship sat inside a life that was already full. Already structured. Already moving in a direction that existed before she entered the picture. She starts realizing something uncomfortable. Your happiness was never her responsibility. Your stability was never her creation. These things belonged to you before the relationship started. They simply continued after it stopped. This understanding changes the emotional math completely. She once believed her presence added something irreplaceable to your world. Now she's confronting the possibility that your world was already complete. Not because she didn't matter. She did. But because matching to someone and being someone's entire foundation are two completely different things. You showed her the difference without saying a single word. Through mornings spent with purpose. Through evenings spent without despair. Through weeks passing without a single desperate reach backward. Your silence became your loudest statement. Your composure became your strongest argument. And the life you kept building became the only proof anyone ever needed that you were always more than just one relationship. Something starts breaking inside her mind around this time. Not dramatically. Not all at once. but like a crack spreading slowly through glass. The story she told herself about you begins losing its shape. Every breakup comes with a private narrative. A version of events that makes the ending feel justified, logical, necessary. She built hers carefully, selected specific memories, highlighted certain moments, framed the relationship in a way that made walking away feel like the right decision. But narratives need cooperation from reality to survive. And reality is no longer cooperating. Because every time she glances in your direction, expecting to find confirmation of her story, she finds contradiction instead. The man who was supposed to be struggling looks focused. The man who was supposed to miss her desperately looks peaceful. The man whose world was supposed to shrink without her looks like his world is actually expanding. That's when the reevaluation begins. Quietly at first, almost unconsciously, she starts replaying old moments. Not the dramatic ones. Not the fights or the tears or the final conversation. The small ones. The ordinary ones that barely registered at the time. The way you handled pressure without raising your voice. The way you absorbed criticism without retaliating. The way you sat with uncomfortable emotions instead of projecting them onto everyone around you. These moments once felt unremarkable. Background noise in a busy relationship. But now they're rising to the surface with new meaning attached to them. She's connecting dots she never connected before. Patterns she overlooked while she was too close to see them clearly. Your calmness wasn't passivity. Your patience wasn't weakness. Your willingness to let things go wasn't because you didn't care enough to fight. It was because you understood something she's only now beginning to grasp. That real strength doesn't announce itself through conflict. It reveals itself through restraint. This realization doesn't arrive with fireworks. It arrives with discomfort. Because accepting that she may have misjudged you means accepting that her entire framework for understanding the relationship might have been incomplete. Nobody enjoys that kind of self-confrontation. But the evidence keeps piling up. Every stable day you live. Every goal you chase without looking backward. Every moment of peace you carry without performing it for anyone. Her old interpretation of you simply cannot hold its ground anymore. The man standing in front of her memories now looks different from the man she thought she left behind. Taller somehow. Not physically. Emotionally. Like someone who always carried more depth than the relationship allowed her to witness. And the hardest part for her isn't seeing this version of you. The hardest part is wondering whether this version existed the whole time. Whether she spent months or years standing next to someone extraordinary without fully recognizing what was right beside her. That question doesn't leave easily once it arrives. It lingers. It revisits her during quiet moments when distractions fade and honesty creeps in. And each time it returns she sees your image slightly differently than before. Here's something nobody talks about openly. The way a man handles losing a relationship completely rewires how attractive he becomes in hindsight. Not surface-level attraction. Something much deeper than that. Something that operates beneath conscious awareness. When someone leaves and the person left behind falls apart, a quiet judgment forms. Sympathy might exist on the surface. But underneath that sympathy sits a subtle loss of respect. Because emotional collapse after rejection signals something specific. It signals that the person's entire sense of worth was anchored to the relationship. But when a man loses a connection and remains standing, remains grounded, remains locked into his own vision, a completely different signal gets transmitted. One that says his value was never borrowed from someone else's presence. That signal is magnetic. Not because it tries to be, but because independence naturally commands attention in a world drowning in emotional codependency. She notices this whether she wants to or not. Your refusal to crumble didn't just preserve your dignity. It elevated your position in her memory. You went from being someone she shared a relationship with to being someone who revealed his truest nature only after that relationship dissolved. And what she sees now challenges everything she understood about modern relationships. Most connections today operate on invisible transactions. One person gives attention expecting loyalty in return. Another offers affection expecting security back. Both people slowly become entangled in a web of emotional debt neither fully acknowledges. But your behavior after the breakup revealed something striking. You weren't operating within that transactional framework. You gave freely while you were together. And when it ended, you didn't demand emotional repayment. You didn't act like she owed you sadness or guilt or a second chance. You simply released the connection with open hands. That kind of emotional generosity is disarming, because most people have never experienced someone who can love deeply and still let go cleanly. Those two abilities seem contradictory to most minds. How can someone care so much yet walk away so smoothly? But you proved they coexist perfectly inside a man who knows his own worth independently from any relationship status. She sees you investing energy into your ambitions now, pouring focus into personal evolution, surrounding yourself with people who match your momentum, building something meaningful from the raw materials of your own discipline. None of this performance targets her attention. None of it carries hidden motives. That authenticity makes it even more impactful, because calculated moves eventually expose themselves. Genuine living never does. It just continues radiating quietly without needing recognition or applause. And standing inside that radiation without even realizing it, she begins feeling something she never anticipated feeling toward you after the breakup. Not nostalgia. Not sadness. Not jealousy. Genuine admiration. Admiration for a man who didn't weaponize the breakup, who didn't use pain as leverage, who chose growth over grievance without making a public spectacle of either one. That admiration settles deep inside her perception permanently, because strength demonstrated through suffering always outweighs strength claimed through words. Weeks become months. Months start stacking up quietly. And your trajectory hasn't shifted even slightly. No sudden breakdowns. No late-night relapses. No signs of hidden struggle leaking through the surface. Just relentless forward motion that refuses to slow down for anything or anyone. This is where her perception crosses a critical threshold. Early on, she could dismiss your composure as temporary. A brave face masking inner turmoil. A performance designed to expire once the camera stopped rolling. But performances have expiration dates. Authenticity doesn't. And the longer your stability persists without a single crack appearing, the harder it becomes for her to categorize it as anything other than genuine. This man isn't pretending. This man isn't suppressing. This man simply operates at a frequency that relationships enhance but never create. That distinction changes everything inside her psychological framework, because she once believed the relationship fueled parts of you. Your motivation, your emotional warmth, your sense of direction. She assumed these qualities existed partly because of the bond you shared together. But now those same qualities burn just as brightly without her anywhere near the flame. Your motivation didn't dim. Your warmth didn't disappear. Your direction didn't scatter into confusion. Everything she thought she contributed to your inner world apparently existed independently all along. Not because her contributions meant nothing, but because your engine was already running before she ever climbed aboard. This permanence unsettles assumptions she didn't even know she carried. Most people secretly believe they leave permanent dents in the lives of people who love them. They imagine their absence creates a void that never quite fills completely. A missing piece that reminds the other person daily of what they lost. But your life shows no void. No missing piece visible from any angle. Just continuous momentum that looks exactly like it always did. Maybe even stronger now. More refined. More intentional. She starts recognizing that your purpose predated her entirely. Your discipline wasn't born inside the relationship. Your emotional intelligence wasn't shaped by arguments you shared together. These attributes belonged to you before her name ever entered your vocabulary. And they remain fully intact now that her name no longer occupies daily conversation. This recognition produces something unexpected inside her mind. Not resentment. Not frustration. Something closer to awe. Because watching someone maintain complete emotional sovereignty month after month without wavering reveals a rare breed of human being. Most people define themselves through their relationships. Their identity shifts depending on who stands beside them. Their confidence rises and falls based on external validation received from partners. But you operate differently. Your identity remained constant through connection and through separation. Through presence and through absence. Through love and through loss. That constancy became your quiet revolution. No banners. No announcements. No victory speeches delivered to empty rooms. Just a man whose life kept expanding regardless of who chose to stay and who chose to leave. And that expansion told a story more compelling than any words could construct. A story of someone whose roots grew so deep that no storm could ever topple what he built above ground. Anybody can look strong when life hands them easy circumstances. Confidence during comfort means nothing. Smiling when everything aligns perfectly requires zero courage. The real measure of a man reveals itself exclusively during moments he never planned for. Moments that arrive uninvited and demand an immediate response from the deepest parts of his character. The ending of your relationship was one of those moments. It arrived without a manual, without instructions, without a clear path forward. Just sudden emptiness where connection once lived. And your response defined you more powerfully than years of shared memories ever could. You didn't chase her through text messages at midnight. You didn't manufacture guilt trips designed to make her second-guess her decision. You didn't recruit mutual friends as emotional messengers carrying your pain to her doorstep. You simply stood still, breathed, and then took the next step forward. That response seems small when described in words. But lived out in real time it carries enormous weight. Because choosing dignity when every emotion inside you screams for reaction requires something most people never develop. Internal authority over external circumstances. She witnessed that authority whether she acknowledged it openly or not. And it registered somewhere deep inside her memory banks. Filed under a category reserved for moments that permanently alter how she views another human being. Because dignity during heartbreak isn't something people encounter regularly. Most breakups produce ugliness. Accusations fly. Secrets get weaponized. Social media becomes a battlefield where indirect attacks replace honest conversation. People transform into versions of themselves they barely recognize. But you refused that transformation. You stayed exactly who you were before the relationship, during the relationship, and after the relationship dissolved completely. That consistency of character across three vastly different emotional landscapes communicates something extraordinary about your internal architecture. It tells her that your personality wasn't situational. Your kindness wasn't conditional. Your maturity wasn't dependent on receiving love in return. These qualities existed as permanent fixtures inside you. Not temporary decorations hung up to impress someone during the dating phase. She remembers this. Trust that. Even if she never calls to tell you. Even if she never sends a message acknowledging what she observed. The memory of your graceful exit lives inside her permanently. Because human beings are hardwired to remember how others made them feel during pivotal moments. And your refusal to create destruction during the most destructive moment of your shared history made her feel something unexpected. Say, even in goodbye, you offered her the rarest gift a man can give during separation. Freedom from guilt. Freedom from fear. Freedom from emotional manipulation disguised as love. You let her go without punishing her for leaving. Without making her carry the burden of your suffering on top of her own emotional weight. That generosity during personal devastation speaks to something most people spend entire lifetimes never cultivating. Emotional maturity forged not through books or theories but through lived experience and conscious choice. And choices made during painful transitions echo louder than choices made during peaceful ones. Your echo still resonates inside her mind every single time she remembers how the story between you concluded. Not with destruction. Not with cruelty. With quiet, unshakable grace. By now the transformation is complete. The man she once thought she understood fully has become someone entirely different inside her mind. Not because you changed, but because she finally sees all of you instead of just the portions that existed inside the relationship's shadow. Everything looks different under this new light. Your availability wasn't clinginess. It was genuine presence. Your willingness to compromise wasn't weakness. It was confidence secure enough not to battle over every small disagreement. Your quietness during arguments wasn't avoidance. It was wisdom knowing some fights don't deserve fuel. She's reinterpreting the entire history you shared. Frame by frame. Moment by moment. And each memory gets rewritten with context she completely missed the first time around. This doesn't necessarily mean she wants you back. Sometimes it does. Sometimes it doesn't. But what it always means is this. She finally comprehends the full scope of what stood beside her. And that comprehension arrives too late to change anything about the past. Here's the powerful truth emerging from all of this. You didn't alter yourself to create this shift. You didn't perform elaborate strategies. You didn't manipulate perception through calculated social media posts. You didn't chase validation from people who knew her hoping words would travel back. You simply stopped contorting yourself to fit inside someone else's life and returned to your original shape. The strength she notices now isn't new. The independence she respects wasn't recently developed. The peace she observes from a distance was always your natural frequency. She's not discovering a transformed man. She's finally witnessing the complete man who existed all along. The one partially hidden behind relationship dynamics and unspoken compromises and the constant subtle adjustments two people make when building something together. Now those adjustments are gone. The relationship structure dissolved completely. And what remains standing in the empty space is just you. Undiluted. Unfiltered. Unapologetically whole without needing another person to complete the picture. That wholeness becomes permanently etched into her memory. Years might pass. She might build new relationships. She might create entirely different chapters of life far removed from your shared story. But the image of a man who kept walking forward when most would have collapsed backward never fades. It becomes the standard against which future experiences get measured. Often unconsciously. Sometimes painfully. Because once someone witnesses real emotional independence, they can never again mistake dependence for love. Once someone sees authentic strength displayed through restraint, they can never again confuse loud reactions with genuine power. You gave her that education without intending to teach anything. Just by being yourself after she left. Just by continuing your life when the easier path would have been falling apart. And that's the lasting impression nobody prepared her to carry. The man who needed nothing from his past became unforgettable inside it. If this resonated with you, hit that subscribe button. More truths coming that most people won't tell you. You don't want to miss what's next.